So I want to talk about maybe a couple of things, but again, it's always an open forum here anyway. But I did have a couple of topics that I wanted to talk about. I mean, certainly some of the, I guess, some of the things that we've been doing recently, both for our community, our commercial offerings, and also some of the things that I've been kind of sort of cooking and playing with. I think, if you are interested, it's worth having a bit of lab time of experimenting and seeing what you can build in there. So I'm going to talk about something that was released fairly recently. You can grab it from here, from Rundeck plugins. It's called Job Status. Nice and simple one to start with, really. It's a dashboard plugin. Little more visualization on each of either the job status or at a project level. Really, the intention is that to add some new features to Rundeck that certainly make it more in line with sort of modern tools. And I think dashboarding was one of the things that we've been asked about quite a bit. So yeah, this was released in 5.13. It's available as part of our SaaS offering. So Runbook automation, which is Rundeck you don't have to run, has this built in, but equally that you can download this from the Rundeck plugins repository, install it as a jar file, and you'll start to get access to this. And I'll give you a quick demo. So I'm going to show you that quick. So this is running in my environment. I can see all of my job executions. I get the success rate, the average duration in here, how many executions have actually been running. So hopefully you can see all of that. Nothing really to configure, but I can configure my time window in there, or decide to show 0 execution jobs in there as well. It takes a few seconds to run normally when it's calculating, but yeah, you can see that. I've had my one job here, my create jobs in Kubernetes, that's running constantly almost. So we should be able to have a look at that as we go through. So I'm going to switch back to my slideshow here. The second plugin I wanted to talk about is actually been really important to our customers. It's an enterprise feature, so would be available if you've got a commercial version of Rundeck. So Runbook automation, self-hosted, Rundeck Enterprise, whatever you're actually running, or the SaaS version again. And really, this is born of the idea that let me just see if I've got a better slide. Okay, that customers we're talking to us about how can they prove the value of automation. That's a crazy thing, right? Because everybody knows that as soon as you implement some level of automation or orchestration, you're getting value. But how can I measure that? How can I go back to my manager every quarter and say, look, that work that I spent a week putting an effort into building these great jobs, these great scripts, these great orchestrations. Well, how can I prove what this has saved me? And in fairness, lots of customers came up with really sort of thoughtful ways of doing that. Querying the database, querying using the API for all of that. And we kind of thought, well, actually, we want to make ROI something that you think about every time you build a job. So very much the idea is as I actually build that job for the first time, I'm starting to think about probably how long is this saving me. And I'll show you how we do that. It's quite straightforward, but it's this idea that I can add that up in time. I can put a value against that time, and I can then go back and prove to my organization, to my team, to my boss, to my business, what a real sort of value actually implementing automation is. And to be honest, I don't care whether you do it in Rundeck or you do something else somewhere else. I think a good practice for anybody who's running any sort of automation is to actually look at the value of that automation, because there is actually a point where where if you're only running an automation once a year, if it doesn't have that value associated with it, well, you've probably wasted that, right? I mean, probably the only exception I might talk about is DR, right? DR is an automation that you hope you never have to run. right? And then it becomes very valuable for that one time a year when you actually do run that. So what have we got? You know, again, a downloadable plugin. It's actually also distributed again with the later versions of the platform. And I think back on this subject of, I guess, measuring ROI as a default. One of the things we've also been asked for customers is to say, well, can I put a default value in for my, 5,000 jobs or whatever, So one of the things that I actually also wrote was a plugin to actually set that, as well as some scripts to set that as well. So there is a plugin that's available to actually set those by defaults as well. It's community, so you are self-supported for it. But the idea is that I could go out of my 5,000 jobs and say, well, okay, well, let me just put in each job that runs is 20 seconds. I don't care what the value is to start with, but it does get you starting to think about how you might start to think about ROI as the key metric. Oh, you are maybe your metrics for your metrics for your jobs are going to be typically success rate, failure rate, how long it took to run to some extent, but the ROI should be a first order kind of setting in there. Right, Martin?
So per job you can fill in time saved, and per job you can also fill in the currency related to it, like how much an hour would cost if you would do it manually, right?
Oh yeah, let me run through that and show you quickly. So if I take a look here, for example, I have a number of jobs, but I'm going to pick one of my more recent ones. This create jobs for Kubernetes, and you can see here. In fact, let me show you how it's configured first. So now within, and actually, ROI as a metric has been in the platform, I don't know, maybe for a year or so, but it was always only surfaceable from an API. So yeah, again, people were quite creative with this, and they built dashboards and things like this. But this is the best way to actually to think about that. So if I take a look in my execution plugins, I've got a custom field here on the ROI metrics data. So you need to check the ROI metrics data. You need to set a time, okay, just 20 minutes maybe. Yeah. And then add this field called hours. Now you can add other fields in there, and you can use them elsewhere to be teed up, but that's the only place that you need to set that up. So yeah, nice and straightforward to actually get that working. And then what you would see in your either at your jobs level, your entire project level, or maybe even your ROI view there, or even at an individual job level, you'll be able to get this view. Now, it takes a few seconds to load. It's actually calculating some of this info on the fly, but you will be able to see, for the, I don't know, 10 or 20,000 executions that I've had of this particular job, what the actual cost saving is. So if I can show you this as well on here as well. So I can save I put my saving in there. I can have a time window over 5 days. And you can see I've had my 755 executions on there. But because of what that saves me and the value of that, there's my ROI value. Now, again, I will leave it to you, everybody, to kind of figure out what your value is. But a good setting is to just to figure how many minutes this probably saves you if you actually had to go in and either download a job, run it, press the button, whatever. Just figure it through. We've seen a lot of success with this, and we're seeing more and more customers now implement this as the very first thing that they think about once they've built the job. So you build the job, add the ROI value. Okay. Anything to add, Martin, as we take on?
We did speak about how do you sort of add this data towards jobs that are already created in a simple way. So
yeah.
And then you had some thoughts around that, I believe.
Yeah, I actually just talked about it, but okay. Yeah, so I have both a plugin as well as some Python script if you wanted to do that, to actually go through and set default job values right the way across an organization. So you've got 4,000 jobs and you want to set 1 minute for every job that's on there, just to get people starting to think about it, just to be able to see some of that value out there. I can see here, for example, I can show jobs that don't have ROI data, which is also interesting, because I've seen this where people who are running like either managed service or running services for big enterprise customers or even smaller enterprise customers, they're encouraging all of their users, their downstream teams that are working with it, to put those ROI values in as well. That way it rolls up at the end of the you roll it up at the end of the month, and you've got, you know, real tangible values about sort of you know, what this is actually paying back from a time perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. Any other comments, Martin? Because you know, you normally got some you've got some more insight about some of the things you've been working on around this.
Well, it's the gamification aspect of it. So suppose you would be a developer, you build a job and you say it saves me 20 minutes. It would be pretty awesome to see that a developer made a job that over time saved the organization a lot of time. And if you sort of gamify that with your colleagues, yeah, which of the developers made the job that adds the most value to the organization? I hear a lot of people doing that, sort of, again, gamification of time saving. No, but I'm very happy with the addition to the platform, either for the open source people to get some more analytics, as well as the actual time saving.
Yeah, I think so. I see more and more, you know, either existing customers or existing users of, you know, of the platform start to think about this now, right? Once we've actually showed it them and sort of, you know, basically showed how simple it is to actually get set up and running. Yeah, it seems to be getting good responses. So any questions about this at all, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm sure Martin will give us a shout if anything appears in the chat that's worth you know, worth responding to. Did want to mention one other thing. It's kind of small, but we've been asked about this quite a lot, and I think this is probably the most interesting for customers who are using our SaaS platform, right? But potentially it could be any other scenario. I mean, if you're self-hosting this, you can query logs. You can look at, you know, sort of the API log. You can look at the audit log to get some of this information. But what I think is also interesting is you've got to do that manually. It's kind of a, you know, I've got to go in and I've got to go and parse a log, and I've got to get the values out, and I've got to go and put it somewhere. With this, the audit stream plugin, you know, can send these actions, send these activities from the platform directly to an endpoint, you know, to a SIEM, to a you know, to a data warehouse, wherever you like. And that will be on, it's on a set of key events. Now I'll cover those in a moment, but in essence it's just a the ability to say, as these events start to occur within Rundeck, what I want to do is actually let my tools know for whatever reason. I mean, it might be, you know, it might actually be SIEM, it might be actually you want to do some action against that, but equally you'll probably want to use it for some sort of reporting at the end. So the events that we are collecting at this point will be you know, job related events, so running and creating, updating, so somebody goes in and updates an ACL, then that will be collected. Users logging in, users failing, users logging out, and then viewing, you know, resources like nodes, for example. So the idea is configure the plugin, set this up in your configuration options, and this will start posting out as it happens. The other thing that I quite like about this as a, you know, as a consultant is you are not storing this on your Rundeck server, which is great. It ticks a lot of boxes from a security perspective. So as the events happen, they're being posted away from the server. So if, for example, you know, your server ever became compromised in any way, the first thing some attacker might do is remove your logs, hide all of those. Now, with that actually being pushed out, I think it's a great way to get a tick in the box for the security story. Any questions? Drop those into the chat, Martin.
Yeah, so normally people use Git as a repository for their actual code, but in this case, if somebody would change the job, like a job step or something, now you can actually see if something changed in the job steps instead of
correct. Git would be better for the just for the actually what changed, but this would be far better for who did it, how did they log in, what all of those things around that. The different use cases. This is much more associated with having an audit trail of all of the things that somebody's done from the moment that they logged in to the moment that they logged out.
Something I really don't know actually. How does it relate to API use? Would API, let's say, commands also be in that same stream?
You would see API commands in there because you're running a job or you're creating a job. When you do it with the API, it's the same in effect as a user doing that. So when you run the API, you're not running something that's kind of magic in the background. You do run under the context of the API key. So that's the only difference that you might want to think about. And the API key is associated with a user. So so you wouldn't be able to necessarily get the individual because it's working the same way as the API does. But you would be able to see anything that was associated with it, that the API used the API user and they ran or created or updated some resource. Cool. I think that's it for the plugins. I just wanted to give a bit of a highlight, and also just to explain that we're adding to this. We're building on what we've been doing over the years. So expect to see more of these sort of great additions coming on, and keep the requests coming in as well. Things you'd like to see. I always like to see a few in the chat window. Wouldn't it be great if you had a plugin to do this, or a plugin to do something else? Now, on that subject, don't leave it to us to build all the plugins. We're a community, right? So any of us could build community plugins. And one thing that I'm totally passionate about is how the later versions of Gen AI tools, vibe coding, platforms like Claude and OpenAI, using sort of Cursor or or any of those tools have opened up the ability to to create these plugins, to create code much easier. Now, I'm not saying for one second this is going to replace the development process, but I will make a statement that I believe now anyway that that platforms like Claude were initially valuable as pair programmers, where you would build something and it would help, and then you'd build something else. It'd still be used like that, but actually it's starting with the levels that we're starting to see in the large language models is that it's getting good. This is this is not just giving me an outline framework for some code. It's certainly writing code better than me. I mean, I've always been kind of from a scripter, from sort of VB script and other things. Python more recently. I do accept Python is a proper development language, but I am by no means a day-to-day developer. I write integrations. I write to help customers. So this is certainly better than me, and it's faster, and it helps me prototype, and it does all of those kind of things that I think if you're not trying this, at least you're missing out. You're missing out on the opportunity to be creative. So I've been using Claude Code and Rundeck now for probably about 4 months, 5 months, something like that, and have had some fantastic results. So what I wanted to do was to share my my workflow. Just, you know, it's no secret, you know, it's not even complex. I do want to share the workflow about how I'm getting good results out of that, just in the hope of the inspiration that I see some, you know, some pull request or something that comes along that says, hey, you know what, we've built some really cool plugins and we'd like to share them with the community. So there's my my not so secret sauce. And again, it looks kind of maybe complex on here, but let me just explain. Really easy. One of the things that the team built maybe a few years ago now, in the idea that we wanted to actually make plugin creation more accessible for everybody, was a Bootstrap application. So there is a Bootstrap application in the Rundeck organization, you know, in the repo on GitHub, called Plugin Bootstrap. It's not named very it does exactly what it's supposed to do, right? But the idea is it's an executable, it's a Java executable, and it helps me really framework a plugin. So it gives me a very basic framework for any of the plugin types that we offer, and I'll show you that in a second. So I normally take that Bootstrap and I build a framework for it. Okay, then at that point I can start to then use my code tools, Claude in my case, to actually analyze that framework and build me a and actually build me the actual code that goes in there. And I promise you, I've had amazing results from this. You know, really good, and some that run even the first time on the first iteration. So, you know, the idea is I get the initial code, I'll ask it to compile, build this after, I'll grab the code out of the lib directory, okay? And then sometimes I get this iteration where maybe I throws an error, or I don't like the look of a field or something like that, and then deploy that locally for me. So that's all I'm doing. I mean, this is not really magic. There's development teams that are building with code all the time, but I promise you that in conjunction with my Bootstrap plugin means that I get very good results very quickly. So if I was to show you my environment, I'm may not have, given I've only got 10 minutes, I don't think I have time to build everything completely, but I will show you, for example, let me hide this. I will show you actually my environment here with the Rundeck plugin Bootstrap. You can see some of the other plugins that I've got in here that I've been building on various times. I've got one there for running an Azure DevOps pipeline. I've got one for creating GPG keys. I've got one for Infoblocks, one for Olama, OpenAI. Set ROI defaults, the plugin that I talked about on there, works really well. So I've got the executable, so that Rundeck plugin Bootstrap. There's a build process if you want to do it, but I'd recommend that you just grab it from you can just grab it from the releases. Well, how do I want to build this? Well, I want to build this in Java. Yeah, I'm actually going to build it in Groovy. Okay, what type is it? It's going to be a workflow step, and I'll show you some of the step types. We can do workflow step, we can do node step, we can do notification plugins. Yeah, I'll give you the list. And then I'm just going to call it sample for now. Okay. At that point, okay, so I put something in there wrong, but you can. It gives me the chance to show you this. So I can have a resource model source if I wanted to have sets of resources in there. Workflow node step, log filters. You know, they're all possible. Let me just do that for a second. Step. Oh yeah. Name Justyn. So I'm going to create a plugin called Justyn in my sample directory. Okay, and that's created that for me. Okay, so I could go into sample. Just want to just to show you how this format is. Yeah. Okay, so I would normally start here at my source directory, and I would get it to build from that point onwards. If I show you that is the command that I would use. You're a developer building production ready code in Groovy. Understand the format of this outline to build a Rundeck plugin using this bootstrap code. And then I can put anything in there, right? So build me the plugin that allows me to get the next available IP address in Infoblocks. And then I need to, just to clean it up a little bit, you add any relevant configuration options, because sometimes it thinks of things that I certainly haven't, and use Rundeck key stores if I need to store secure values. Okay, do not add example or template plugins, and build this after. What I end up with at the end, I promise you, is a jar file that I can take, that I can pull into here. I can deploy straight into plugins. Okay. Okay, and it's allowed me to build things like this. This was exactly that scenario. What is my API that I'm going to use? What is the username that I'm going to use? Remember, I said to it, use the password storage path, so it'll let me use my my key store. Okay, it will let me also add other other settings that I'd not thought of. Remember, I only asked it to get me the next IP address. So it's telling me how many IP addresses I want to get. I can state to it output as a JSON response. If I do that as a JSON response, then I can simply use our log filters to be able to parse that response. Okay, I can see what I've done here. I've been waiting in here that long that been waiting here that long that I logged myself out. But my point to everybody is really, if I was to throw the gauntlet down and say, hey, here's a challenge, if you get some time in your day, and you're already using code tools to help build that, start to think about what you might want to build for your daily jobs, for your scenarios where you don't have specific plugins. I've got one here for a llama, for example, where customers wanted a local LLM to be able to do some processing against a log, for example. Make it nice and simple for my team. So have a think about that. It is super easy. If I just edit this, I want to just show you quickly. It is super easy, and I think none of us have any sort of excuses for not trying to get a little bit creative here if we want to do that. And again, I think one of the strengths of our community as a as a set of builders is that we do like to share. So this would be my scenario here, where I'm running a command against a local llama or local LLM. Look at the data output, give me a view on the business processes and why they might be. Respond very simply in Dutch. So I did that for Martin here. Those were the kind of things, and then I can use, of course, my my JQ mapper to actually extract that out to be able to use elsewhere. So hopefully that was a bit of an overview. I'm quite passionate about trying to improve Rundeck with at least some prototyping of code. They work very well. When you actually build the apps in Groovy, they are very performant. I've seen these working really well even at scale. So by all means, get a code review from your development team. Have them have a look through it. But I've had nothing but good responses back from anything that I've done. So that was it from me, really. I wanted just to run through that, and I think this was and I think this was interesting.
Thanks all for tuning in. You'll be receiving the recording on your emails, and we'll see you next time. Have a good summer. Bye all.
Bye-bye.